All right, so
Hey.
Boozy was a picture taker. She sold some things online. She wanted me to have a merce. I said no.
Come on, you got to seize the goddamn gap.
People are so goddamn inefficient. Oh, god damn it! I don't care if you're old, seize the gap!
Hey man, I gotta get going. I have some friends from my fantasy league coming over, so I should find my ride.
Hey, I like sports too. Yeah, I do, but I've never really engaged with the fantasy element of it.
Straight up now, tell me, is it gonna be you and me together? Oh, 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 or are you just having fun?
You know what, John? Cancel your ride. I'll drive you to your fantasy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And daily fantasy makes every game matter.
Stop being so gosh darn inefficient. That's right. It's time for Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. No, we are not seizing up. This is the time to zone in and focus because we're about to hit you with what you need for Week 8 NFL football right here on the Joe Blow Football Show, Seize the Gap Fantasy Football style. Now, before we say anything, Magnum Mills, we got to let the people know news broke today about the Green Bay Packers. They are now in the advanced COVID-19 protocol because of the potential spreading of their defensive coordinator, Joe Brady, which came down with COVID. And now we've got Devontae Adams on the list, right? Which means we got to have 2 negative tests in 24 hours apart. There is a chance this game's Thursday night football. We won't know this. This will come out before that game is played. We don't know right now, but if you got any Green Bay Packers in your lineups this week, watch closely because that is a big freaking deal.
Correct.
Now, Magnum Mills, Jamie G, we're here seizing the gap, baby. That's right. Let's talk a little fantasy foosball. And I want to get right into it, Mills. Lots of shit going on here. Let's start right up at the top at quarterback. We saw another quarterback injury in New York or New Jersey rather, and that was rookie quarterback Zach Wilson of the New York Jets got rolled up by Matthew Judon. That wasn't quite as bad as we thought, right? What's the latest there?
We like this because we can do a little bit of a twofer here, and that Zach Wilson suffered a PCL sprain, should be out roughly 4 to 6 weeks, so I expect him to go on IR. In response to that, it looked like we might see, Mike White, a quarterback for the Jets, but they did turn around, make a trade with the Eagles to bring back Joe Flacco. That pretty much puts me off all the Jets, but at this point, I don't know if there's really going to be a huge drop-off from what Wilson was doing, and it might even help a couple of the fantasy assets. So
one thing that I do want to talk about is we have 2 other injuries here with a little bit of a step up in quarterback play. And that's kind of big news here with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, right? Like we're all kind of, anybody who owns any Cowboys kind of crossing their fingers here that calf is going to be loosened up enough for Dak to play at the level he's been playing. Pretty big drop off there, right, Mills? If he doesn't play.
Yeah, if he doesn't play, they're in deep shit in Minnesota this week. The Cowboys are optimistic that he will play. Didn't practice Monday. He is legitimately questionable. I think he plays, but is, probably limited. So just, again, keep an eye out. If you have any Cowboy skill position players, you're probably looking at a position where you might not want to start any of them if Dak Prescott isn't under center. And then although you go, I guess it's bigger than Zach Wilson.
That's what she said.
Baker Mayfield is questionable for the Browns. They're at home versus the Steelers this week. He's legitimately questionable. His shoulder is fucked up. He's going to have surgery after the season. Honestly, right now, it's not a given that, 80% of Baker Mayfield is better than Case Keenum. There's probably people who want to make an argument that Case Keenum is flat out better than Baker Mayfield at this point, but it is what it is. I think he's 50-50 to play this week. I would expect Keenum to probably be under center. So if you're in a 2-quarterback super flex league, you can go ahead, throw, 10% of your FAAB at Keenum, hope you get another start or 2 out of him.
Let's talk about a couple of ads. And right off the top here, one that jumped off to me was Trevor Lawrence, right? I mean, I think it's possible with the bye week that he was dropped in quite a few leagues. This might be a good time to scoop him up because if you look at the upcoming schedule, I think short of 1 or maybe 2 games over the next 4 or 5, he looks like a decent play here, right? So, I mean, give us your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, he's set up pretty well here over the next 5 weeks. He's got 4 positive matchups from a fantasy quarterback standpoint, starting with this week at Seattle, whose defense hasn't been, their best defense basically at this point has been the weather, and you can't count on that every week. So if he's out there, 1 quarterback league, you're struggling a little bit or whatever, he's worth that kind of 2 to 4% of your FAAB. get him on there, whether or not he's part of a quarterback by committee, or maybe you just ride him for a couple of weeks, move on to the next best thing. And speaking of the next best thing, we have to talk about Deshaun Watson quickly. Obviously, he's out there in 2 quarterback superflex. Go throw 25 to 50% of your FAB at him on the off chance that he does wind up starting somebody else. He will absolutely be worth it. I am not going to comment on his off the field shit. I'm just trying to keep it strictly between the lines here. If you're in a single quarterback league, you have to at least pay attention. If he's out there and you have the roster space, I would say, I don't know, maybe 5-10% tops if you've got a lot of your FAB left to tuck him there in case he winds up in a good spot. It looks like the NFL is going to let him play if he gets traded. So, you kind of have to at least acknowledge it. I don't know that he'll get traded, but it does seem like it's a legitimate coin flip at this point. So, this week you especially have to consider it, like I said, in the 2 quarterback super flex format.
Talk to me a little bit about Trey Lance. Is this kind of not the same deal, obviously, because we know it's only a matter of time that he kind of takes over for Jimmy G, but Jimmy G did not look that great Sunday night against the Colts. I get it. He was, still a little banged up, inclement weather. The 90s, ska band was in the house, punk ska, Cyclone Bomb was in there. But is Trey Lance getting ready to take over here sooner rather than later?
It looks like it's going to wait at least another week, as Kyle Shannon has come out and said that he expects Jimmy Garoppolo to start in week 8. But I would say, obviously Lance should be owned in all super flex 2 quarterbacks leagues. And if you have the space on the end of your bench and you're not doing anything else with it, you can pick him up for 1% of your FAB, tuck Trey Lance on the end of your bench. We've seen quarterbacks like Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, some of these, more raw players carry teams to fantasy championships before in the playoffs. So a guy with rushing ability like that, we saw it with Jalen Hurts last year. Even though he wasn't a great passer, he won a lot of games for his fantasy owners with his legs. So Trey Lance is exactly the kind of guy you want on the end of your bench if you're not using that roster spot for anything else.
One interesting matchup. Let's look forward to some potential streaming options. One that just jumps off the page and slaps you across the face with a big old dick is Jameis Winston, right? I mean, he's taken on the Bucks. This is a big one for him. They're really banged up in the secondary. I mean, Richard Sherman's like coaching the cornerbacks. I mean, this is a tough situation there. This has got to be in play, right, Mills? What are you spending FAB wise here for Jameis Winston?
Again, he's a nice 1 week streaming play at home versus the Bucks, revenge game in the dome. But you can't go too nuts because Winston has basically proven he's either going to. I mean, he's been the ultimate kind of, Bob, that boomer bust play quarterback, and that he's either been like a top 5 quarterback or like not even a top 20 quarterback against the Tampa Bay defense in a game where they should need to score a lot of points. I expect it to be more the former than the latter, but still, I'm probably not going more than, about 2, maybe 3% of my FAB in a 1 quarterback league because there's no guarantee you can put him in there next week. And just to move on down the list, hey, Jacksonville, we like Trevor Lawrence, but we also like going against your defense. So if you're desperate, you got almost nothing else out there. Geno Smith's another guy, 1% of your FAB, get him in there. He's still got DK Metcalf. He's still got Tyler Lockett in their home against Jacksonville Jaguars, and I shouldn't need to sell it much harder than that.
Yeah, that's pretty hard at
That's
a good
what she
medium
said.
pace. One thing too is the New York Giants, right? With Danny Trips, he might fall his ass right into the waiver wire, and you might be able to scoop him up. And Kansas City Chiefs here, right? The Queefs, they're really reeling. I mean, they are reeling hard. They're Steely Dan reeling in the years, dude. I mean, this is epic form of reeling. And this is a decent play for him, right? I mean, when else are you going to use Danny Trips?
Yeah, he's had a couple of down weeks in a row. I mean, but the Chiefs have literally allowed pretty much every quarterback to get home this year. I do think the Chiefs win, but again, garbage time production counts from a fantasy standpoint. Yeah, he showed, he does trip over the yard line and fall sometimes, but we have seen him making up plays with his leg to, again, like we just talked about, for a quarterback from a fantasy standpoint, passing is nice, rushing is almost always just better and more efficient. So he could still get there even if the Giants fucking lose like 45 to, 15.
Danny Tripp, stop being so damn inefficient. Let's move on to the running back position. This is just an absolute heartbreaker for me. I thought for sure this was going to be the emergence year for him. He was going to be used just like Jonathan Taylor. I'm talking about Miles Sanders. The coach comes in from Indy. We think it's going to be the same feature back situation with Miles Sanders, completely disappoints. And then we watch him get carted off. What the hell is going on in Philadelphia, Mills?
Well, good news, bad news. We got a pretty recent report on this, and Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni called him week to week, but wasn't willing to rule him out for week 8. I don't expect him to play in week 8, but this does mean that, you may be only looking at a 2 or 3 week injury, which brings us to Kenneth Gainwell, who's going to be a pretty popular waiver wire ad this week, especially because the Eagles are playing the Lions. The way they use the running backs going into week 7 seemed to indicate that Gainwell was way ahead of Boston Scott, who was a healthy scratch at one point. But Scott did get in there, got about the same number of carries, did punch one in for a touchdown. So I do think this is going to be some sort of running back by committee. I do think that you need to pick Gainwell up, especially if you own Sanders, but I'm probably going 5 to maybe 10, 12% of your FAB. Don't go nuts, because I do think Sanders is back sooner than later. And honestly, if Sanders wasn't getting it done, why do you think Gainwell will Jalen Hurts is going to steal enough of these red zone carries that it's going to make it tough for all these running backs.
Yeah, let's keep it in the NFC East, and let's move up to New Jersey, and let's talk about Saquon Barkley. What's the latest on that watermelon of an ankle, man? Is that thing come down a little bit, or is he still floating at sea with that thing? I think you could literally float with that. A lot of fluid. Frank's fluids.
His ankle was the size of a rum ham. I mean, once upon a time up in Jersey, Saquon Barkley is still doubtful. Yeah, not great. But good news is it does seem like he really could actually return in week 9. So if you need a 1 week option at running back, Devontae Booker hasn't lit the world on fire, but again, he's at that same bad Kansas City offense this week. So you can throw him in there for 2-3% of your FAB.
Mills, good news, bad news in Cleveland. It looks like Nick Chubb is going to come back here week 8. What does that mean for the Dearness Johnson folks of the world? Where are we at, man? We had the big week last week. What's going on here with Cleveland now that it looks like Chubb's back?
I would still expect this to be somewhat of a timeshare. They do like to use the 2 backs, because if they didn't, Nick Chubb would get 40 carries, which we love as fantasy people, but he probably wouldn't last doing that. If Johnson's still out there, if somebody cuts him, I would spend, call it 5 to 10% of my FAB on him. Even if Chubb's healthy, like I said, he should have a role. If Chubb did have a setback or whatever, he would be looking at a similar situation to what you saw on Thursday Night Football against Broncos, which was pretty nice for fantasy owners. He's looked good. He wasn't a supreme talent, but all you can judge him is what he's done on the field. He's looked good so far. Even if Chubb's back, don't forget about him.
Don't you forget about Ernest Johnson. Don't. Let's move on to the Vegas Raiders. Man, very quickly, Josh Jacobs. This has been an injury-riddled kind of career for this guy. You feel bad for him a little bit here, but he suffered a chest injury, was ruled out right away. Pistachio wasn't messing around, huh? Get him out of here. And basically now it looks like he's in line to play this week. But tell us a little bit about Kenyon Drake. Is this going to be the emergence of the skill that we know is in there somewhere? Is he going to start to be kind of get more looks here under Pistachio, or what? What are we doing with adding him?
You have a little bit of leeway here, because the Raiders are one of the 2 teams, along with the Ravens, on a bye this week. If they had to play this week, I don't know if Josh Jacobs would play, but they seem very confident that he will play in week 9. On the other hand, they have healthy scratched Peyton Barber, leaving Kenyon Drake as not only kind of the pass casting alternative, but also the handcuff to Jacobs. And that's kind of where you're getting your value here. Jalen Richard has returned, taking a couple of targets away from Drake. But if, that makes kind of Drake a weak flex play. But if Jacobs were to miss time, Drake might even be better than Jacobs, because he's going to get more targets than Jacobs is currently getting. So that makes him at least worth picking up, even though they're on a bye. Jacobs expected to return. I'd go that same kind of 5 to 10% of your FAB, as long as you have room on your bench to carry him through the bye.
Mills, walk us through a couple of ads here at the running back position. You've got 2 coming out of the AFC North.
Yeah, I mean, again, Latavius Murray, the other team on a bye here. It does look like he had a bit of a high ankle sprain, but he's kind of clearly the leader of the RBBC there. It doesn't look like they want to give Tyson Williams time. Le'Veon Bell looks wiped, and I think Devontae Freeman is best used in a part-time role. So if he's out there and you can, again, carry him through the bye week on your bench, he's worth, call it 2 to 5% of your FAB. Talk him on your bench. He's not going to be a great start every week, but he does have some touchdown upside, with the ability to get on 60, 80 yards. Similar thing that on the other side of the ball that week, the other NFC North team was the Cincinnati Bengals. Samaje Perine returned from the COVID list. He's clearly the handcuff to Mixon. Did get a kind of long garbage time touchdown at the end of that game. So, it is what it is. If you have room on your bench, you're not going to want to start Perine if Mixon's healthy, but he's a decent enough handcuff. So if you got the space in the end of your bench, he's worth 1 to 2% of your FAB to tuck there.
We know that there is one lead pony in Indianapolis, and that is Jonathan Taylor. That dude is JT money. But Marlon Mack is an interesting thing. There were a lot of rumors this past week about the possibility of him getting traded. And there's a couple of teams on that list where it would make sense. Is this worth, I don't know, 1, maybe 2% of your FAB just in case he gets that trade?
Yep, that's precisely it. He's exactly the kind of guy could, given a bigger role, do some good things. But yeah, I mean, honestly, if Marlon Mack is out there, 1% of your FAB, put him on the bench on the off chance that he is traded to the Ravens, to the Chiefs, to a spot like that. If he's not, then you can cut him next week. You lost 1% of your FAB. Similar type thing. It does look like Khalil Herbert is locked down the majority of carries for the Chicago Bears with Dave Montgomery out. But Damian Williams is back on the COVID list. If somebody cuts him, he's worth spending, 1% to pick up because he will still have a role there, especially in PPR leagues. I could see him working as kind of like their, Gio Bernard, like hurry up offense, comeback mode, break less in case of emergency option, and pour one out a little bit for the Ohio State's Trey Sermon, but it does look like that he is not going to really have a role with the 49ers with all the other running backs healthy. JaMychal Hasty came back from IR this week and operated as basically the pass catching third down back with Elijah Mitchell getting all the carries. Obviously, Mitchell should be owned. If he's not, he's like a 50% plus fit at all. But do be warned that Jeff Wilson could be back in a few weeks, whatever, to kind of eat into that. It does look like JaMychal Hasty is going to be that kind of pass catching, change of pace back. So he's worth 2 to 4% of your FAB if he's out there.
Let's move on to wide receivers. We got a bunch of injuries here to go through. I want to start in Denver with wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. He's been designated return from IR and is probable for this week. What does that mean for Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, like these other players there? What's your take on the second and third and fourth options that have emerged in Denver with Jerry Jeudy gone in the last few weeks?
It just seems that honestly, the Broncos just don't have a prolific enough offense to really feed multiple fantasy options. They're trying to support, a tight end one and Noah Fant, 2 running backs, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick. Now you bring Jerry Jeudy back in the mix. Unless something changes here at the quarterback position, it doesn't seem likely they can support all those options. So I would say this probably is a downgrade to Sutton. Tim Patrick, you could probably cut in most leagues. This probably hurts Noah Fant a bit. Obviously, if Jerry Jeudy is out there, though, he is a guy, again, I'd probably go at least 25 to 50% of my FAB on.
Yeah, and then we're seeing kind of something similar here with Dallas Cowboys getting somebody eligible to return off IR, and that's Michael Gallup. Kind of forgot about him, as prolific as Dallas's offense has been. And I have a feeling when he comes back up, man, business is going to be good for him, and he's going to get some looks here. Mills, he's questionable for week 8, but if Gallup's been dropped or he's floating around out there, what type of percentage of FAB are you spending on him to get him on your roster?
Because of the injury to Dak Prescott, because Gallup isn't guaranteed to return this week, I would say you could probably be able to snag him for like 3 to 5% of your FAB. Again, he's not a guy that you're going to feel super confident every week, but look at I would say an analog to him is Emmanuel Sanders for the Bills. Is he going to be the number 1 guy every week? No, but he's a good guy that can play inside or out and get some targets in the red zone. So he'll probably have a few spike games before the year's over. Exactly the kind of guy you want to tuck at the end of your bench if you have the space.
The Mills, when we go over to Cleveland, even though they got Jarvis Landry back, they kind of got banged up a little bit in the wide receiver room. And I think they're missing some bodies there. Walk us through kind of what's going on with the wide receiver position in Cleveland.
Apparently, OBJ is dealing with injuries to both shoulders. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones did a personal no-no of mine and suffered an injury in pregame warmups, as once upon a time Santonio Holmes did. That just sucks, dude. Beckham aggravated his shoulder injury during the game. Well, one of his shoulder injuries. He's completely questionable this week, as is Donovan Peoples-Jones. So that pretty much leaves Jarvis Landry is the only game in town at wide receiver outside of rookie Anthony Schwartz or, I guess, Rashard Higgins. Yay. And we got to just say it again, man, that the New Jersey Giants, not great, Bob. Sterling Shepard re-aggravated his hamstring injury. He and Kadarius Toney are both very questionable for this week. Why we consider Kenny Galladay doubtful. But if Toney or Galladay are actually dropped in your league, that's a spot where, again, if you have a spot at the end of your bench, so you can carry an injured guy, or you can tuck them on IR if they go there. I'd bid 1, 2, 3% of your fab. You took those guys at the end of your bench because they could still wind up being a thing. Garbage time production counts.
Yeah, and one creeper guy here that you might be able to snag because he's on bye this week is Ravens wide receiver Rashad Bateman. Right, it's kind of been surprising. The passing volume of the Ravens offense is certainly on the uptick. He's on a bye. He's probably available. Matt Mills, what do you think you can get him for here from a FAB standpoint?
If he were playing this week, I think you would have to go into that, somewhere in that 10 to 20 range. But I think with him on a bye, call it maybe the 4 to 8% range. I think you can land him. And he is actually operating more or less as their kind of wide receiver one and allowing Hollywood Brown to run some of the deeper routes and whatnot and be a more traditional kind of, X wide receiver, kind of stretch the field and whatnot. So, I don't think he's going anywhere. He came right in from IR, got targets. As long as, again, you can afford to sit on him this week. Nice guy to add to your roster.
Yeah, you can't deny any of that. Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Russell Gage, like he's not like the sexiest dude in the world in terms of like, I feel great. I just snagged Gage. It's not like if Ridley was sitting out there, right? I mean, but this is a guy that's kind of quietly in a sneaking kind of way has found the end zone a couple of times in recent weeks, right? I mean, he's clearly emerged as kind of splitting that second option between, Kyle Pitts and Russell Gage when it's not going to Ridley, right? I mean, is he worthy of picking up here, Mills?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Gage is he's always been kind of like that solid slot possession wide receiver guy after, he just returned this week. He's really kind of more like a wide receiver 4 or a flex. He did find the end zone last week, but he's not really a red zone target. The key is, though, that the Falcons now, they got a couple guys. You have Kyle Pitts, you have Calvin Ridley, you have Cordero Patterson. If defenses are trying to cover all those guys, that's going to open something up. And that kind of makes, Gage, again, not sexy, but a guy worth, 1, 2, 3% of your fab. If you need somebody in a deep league where you need a 4th wide receiver or a flex option, a lot of weeks you could depend on him to get that, 8 to 12 points. If he scores a touchdown, there's your,
One guy that I absolutely love is Hunter Renfrow, right? I mean, this guy he's not Bob Boom or bust. He's his cousin, Steady Eddie. He's a Robert. He is Steady Eddie every week. He just delivers on third downs. If he's going to get enough volume in PPR leagues, but if he finds the end zone, you kind of struck gold here a little bit with him, right? I mean, what are you spending on him just from his steady production of just getting the looks on third down and moving the chains?
Yeah, I mean, again, on a bye this week, so you're going to get a little bit of a buying discount here. He's almost a wide receiver version of Robo Brady. He's very consistent with his receptions and targets and his yardage. Like you said, if he finds the end zone, he's, basically like a slightly less valuable version of what Cole Beasley did last year for the Bills. So I would say that, if he's out there, he's worth that 4 to 8% of your fab, even though he's on a bye. Just, again, know that he's on a bye this week. You're not going to be able to use him, so you need to have that roster spot available.
Are we starting to see an uptick of interest in New Orleans Saints wide receivers here? I know so much of, Steady Eddie's absolute stark opposite, Bob, is Jameis Wilson, right? Jameis Winston is a boom or bust 100%. But what's going on with some of the other wide receivers, particularly Marquez Callaway and Traquan Swift in the New Orleans Saints offense?
Yeah, we saw Smith get back on the field on Monday Night Football. Yeah, he's fine if he's out there. He's like a 1% guy. If you have a lot of room, he's probably a guy built for deeper leagues at this point. Really, probably even a best ball guy optimally when he's perfectly healthy and the Saints have everyone at full strength. Marquez Callaway is interesting. He has functioned as the wide receiver 1 in this offense, despite the fact that it's not a high volume passing offense. I'd say he's worth 4 to 6% of your fab. He's run a fair number of red zone targets. And I think that the addition of Traquan Smith can actually help him, with Smith being that kind of deep threat that opens things up a little bit for him to run some of those more possession intermediate type routes. So yeah, if he's out there, despite the, the Bob version of Jameis that exists now, I definitely would be down with some Marquez Callaway. And, one more thing while we're right here at the end of wide receivers, I do like to get a piece of good offenses where you can. We've seen that pay off this year with, say, buying Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills, who wasn't a highly thought of part of that offense, but it's done great. And I would say one way you can do that right now is to get wide receiver Van Jefferson for the Los Angeles Rams. He's playing, 80 to 95% of the snaps. He's seeing a similar target share to Robert Woods, but yet he's still available in a ton of leagues. A guy you could pick up and give you that same kind of, somewhere between wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 flex value. So he's out there. If he's still out there, that probably means no one's on him. He didn't have a huge game last week. So I think you could probably cop in for like 2 to 4% of your FAB.
Let's move on to tight ends. There's really just one big injury this week to note, and that is Las Vegas Raiders star tight end, all world, you name it. Darren Waller had a tough week last week. Reports where he tripped over a teammate at practice, suffered an inner ankle and heel injury, was downgraded to questionable, and ended up missing the game. Now, Foster Moreau performed, but Mills, when can we expect to see Darren Waller suit back up for the Raiders? The good news is, I guess, they're heading into a bye this week.
Yeah, all reports currently indicate that he should be available to return in week 9 as they are on a bye. But much like Dak Prescott this week, teams can say whatever the fuck they want when they go into the bye. So we do have to keep an eye on that. And Foster Moreau would be a fine, week-to-week streaming option, much like the next guy we'll talk about here. Well, maybe not the next guy, but a guy we'll talk about soon who's just basically been like, as long as the other guy's out, you can stream him every week.
One other injury that I want to note is just Dawson Knox again suffered the broken bone in the hand last week, week 7 on Monday Night Football in Tennessee. The Bills were in a bye this past week. Heading into this week, they are going to be without Dawson Knox. So he remains out, and we'll see if he comes back the following week or the week after. Mills, let's talk about a couple ads, and you called it. We're definitely going to talk about this guy, and it's not just because his name is Mo Cox or Alley Cox, or put it all together just because it's amazing. Give me some Mo Alley Cox. I mean, that's just like, you can't make this up. It writes itself. I love it. I can say it all day, every day. Sometimes I do when I'm feeling blue. Now, Mo Alley Cox is a guy here, right? It's not tight end position is so bad. It's literally the worst.
The worst. She is the worst person in the world. Huge, skank, terrible.
It is pretty John Ralphio right there. I mean, I believe in his last 3 or 4 games, Cox has had at least a touchdown or 50 yards receiving. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's roughly, again, that 8 to 12 points as a tight end these days. That's not bad. And historically, you've liked, both Colts tight ends and Carson Wentz tight ends. If he is, the best of those available, he's definitely worth 1 to 3% of your FAB, especially if you're playing that tight end roulette. And we like to, we're talking about Sam Bradford, Sam Darnold. Let's talk about Dan Arnold, who once was with Sam Darnold, but now the Darnold connection is not there. He's in Jacksonville. He realistically looks to be probably the 3rd target in their passing game, depending on how much they target James Robinson, and probably their 2nd most targeted guy in the red zone. Tight end is shit this year. Again, same thing, 1 to 3%. He's a guy you could probably put out there most weeks and know that, again, even if the Jaguars are getting fucking killed, GTP counts.
GTP. One guy that you might finally be able to quit. It looks like his time is nearing an end, but he could be in play maybe one more time here as a streaming option at again, a super weak tight end position is none other than Ricky Seals Jones coming in out of Washington. He seems to be a guy. I know Logan Thomas is coming back. He's coming.
That's what she said.
But
what a bullet.
But this could be a potential here. I mean, Denver's a good defense, but he's getting the volume, right? I mean, he's getting targets, Ricky Seals Jones is.
Yeah, good enough to be a back end tight end 1. We don't have as many buys this week as we had last week, but they, again, don't have a lot else. They've got Terry McLaurin and JD McKissick, and that's kind of in the passing game. So that's worth, again, 1-2% of your FAB, even if it's a 1-week play. I'll just bang through the rest of these real quick. In that, Evan Ingram, I've tried to make you a thing. I don't think you can be a weekly thing, but again, the Giants are shorthanded, traveling to face the Kansas City Chiefs defense this week. That makes them fine as a 1-week streamer, 1-2% or whatever. If that's what you got to do at tight end this week. And one last one we've seen this year, the Bengals offense is taking a step forward in aspects, and CJ Uzama. I'm just saying, he just had 2 weeks where he's been a top 5 tight end. Yeah, he's been a back end tight end 2 to tight end 3 the rest of those weeks, but that is an upside that you don't see with a lot of guys. And he is in New Jersey to face the Jets this week. So, you're at the end of the whatever. You do worse than Uzama.
So well played. Defense, special teams, they matter too. Let's talk about some streaming options. Now, one ad, particularly they're just coming off a bye, coming out. I know this goes against your policy, Mills. You typically do not spend big and pay up for a defense. but talk to me about the Buffalo Bills at home against Miami Dolphins this week.
Yeah, I mean, the spend big is relative. I would say here, I could go somewhere between 5 and 10% of the Bills defense if they're out there, because they have proven to be, every year there's a couple of defense you can pretty much start every week. The Bills defense looks like they have that talent, and their schedule looks pretty fucking awesome the rest of the way out. So I really wouldn't hesitate to go a little bit above what I might normally go for a defense there, because if you can start them every week, then you can save that 2%, that 3% you're spending on streaming defenses on something else.
Mills, give me another week 9 option that you like here for defense streaming.
Well, I mean, this is pretty easy. Let's just go against our guys, right? So first, you want to go against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Seattle Seahawks, step on up. You're at home versus the Jaguars. Good enough for me. And the Bengals, I mean, they just actually walked into Baltimore and did a job on Lamar Jackson in them. Now that they're going to face Joe Flacco and the Jets, yeah, I think you could feel pretty good about starting the Bengals this week. And, I'm not wild about the Eagles' prospects to win this week on the road at Detroit, but every week, if you just start the defense that's going against Detroit, you get like a minimum of 4 points without any real worry about negative points. So, yeah, it sucks, but the Eagles, again, even though I'm not wild about them winning, you could definitely still start them against Jared Goff.
Life's up and then you die. Look, if there's one thing it's you gotta like and subscribe Joe Blow Football Show right this minute. If you haven't already, that's what you get. 2, you gotta stop being so goddamn inefficient. You gotta seize the gap. Come on, seize the gap. Fantasy football, Joe Blow Football Show, Jimmy G, Magnum Mills. Mills, it's time to get out of here. Need a drink.
Yeah, he didn't mean to give you the right to the moon. He just was trying to. He lost his hair today. I mean, he's got to pee. He lost his hair. It's been a rough day. So if you've had a rough day, the best thing you do is make sure that you don't fuck up and lose a fantasy football. The best way you can do that is by following us, liking us. If you have a question, ask us. You can do that by commenting on our videos. Find them all by going to joeblowfootballshow.com. You can tweet at us. You can Instagram at us, whatever that's called. You do Instagram at someone, you hit them up on the gram, whatever the fucking youths say these days. The 2 youths.
Is it possible the 2 youths?
2 what? Oh, what was that word?
What word?
2 what?
What?
Did you say youths?
Yeah, 2 youths.
We're at Joe Blow Show. All of our fantasy specific content is at Seize the Gap FF, and we occasionally live stream on Twitch like the Utes at Joe Blow Football Show. We'll be back with more fucking nonsense and good advice somehow all at the same time.